Kundalini, spontaneous movements, and dystonia, my research journey. This video is not meant to convince anyone of anything. It's simply a way to give context to what happened to me and to explain how I ended up researching dystonia in relation to spontaneous movements. For most of my life, I was not a spiritual person at all. I considered myself rational, practical. I was a chef, focused on work, food, and my family. I didn't meditate, I didn't believe in mystical experiences, and I had no interest in spirituality. What happened to me started from a physical health journey, not a spiritual one. After years of declining health, fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, sleep apnea, and other issues, I radically changed my diet and lifestyle. The improvements were dramatic. Most of my symptoms disappeared. My body felt alive again. Later, while researching a long-standing physical issue related to salivary gland calcification, I began supplementing carefully with nutrients like vitamin K2, magnesium, iodine, vitamin D, and selenium. The goal was purely physiological. Then something unexpected happened. I started experiencing strong internal sensations, pressure in the head, heat in the spine, waves of energy. At first, I assumed this was detoxification or a nervous system reaction. I dismissed anything spiritual, but the experiences intensified. Out of curiosity, not belief, I tried meditation, and that moment marked what many traditions call a Kundalini awakening. The experiences that followed were profound and undeniable to me, even though I had no framework for them. After that awakening, I began experiencing spontaneous involuntary movements, often called kriyas. These movements did not exist before the awakening. In my case, they are mainly located in the neck, the jaw, the throat. They involve tightening, pulling, twisting, and sustained muscle contractions. They are not voluntary. They don't feel symbolic. They feel physical. As time went on and these movements persisted, I began researching them online, trying to understand what was happening without spiritual bias. That's when I came across the medical term dystonia. When I read the clinical descriptions, involuntary muscle contractions, abnormal postures, repetitive or sustained movements, especially in the neck and jaw, the overlap was impossible to ignore. So I asked myself a serious question. Could there be a connection between what is described spiritually as Kundalini Kriyas and what medicine calls dystonia? To explore this carefully, I asked ChatGPT and had a long, structured conversation about it. At first, the distinction was clear. Kundalini awakening is a spiritual framework. Dystonia is a neurological movement disorder. Similarity alone doesn't prove causation. But then I refined the question. I asked, if spontaneous movements appear only after a Kundalini awakening, persist for a long time, and were never present before, does that increase the likelihood of a connection? The answer was nuanced and important. Timing alone doesn't prove direct causation, but it makes coincidence unlikely. The most plausible explanation is not mystical energy causing disease, but something more grounded. A Kundalini awakening can place the nervous system into an intense state of activation. In a vulnerable system, that activation can destabilize motor control and lead to persistent movement patterns through maladaptive neuroplasticity. In other words, the awakening may act as a trigger or catalyst, while the movements themselves are neurological. I later found a video by a dystonia specialist who openly discusses Kundalini and dystonia together. What stood out to me was that, despite using Eastern language like energy and blockages, he ultimately described the same thing in Western terms: trauma, nervous system dysregulation, guarding, and learned motor patterns. 2 languages, 1 nervous system. This helped me reframe everything. The conclusion I arrived at is not that dystonia is spiritual, and not that Kundalini is just neurological. It's that meaning and physiology can coexist. The awakening may explain why this started. Neuroscience explains how it continues and how it can change. For me, this understanding removed fear. It removed the idea that suffering is required, and it removed the pressure to interpret symptoms as something sacred or something broken. What matters now is regulation, grounding, and care. Not forcing energy, not suppressing symptoms, and not romanticizing them. I'm sharing this as part of my journey, not as a conclusion. If you're experiencing something similar, I hope this helps you explore the topic with clarity, curiosity, and balance.